Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order our meeting of the directors of the New York Convention Center Development Corporation for Wednesday, December 14, 2016. I'd like to note for the record that this meeting is being webcast. All of the directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and, of course, are free to ask questions at any time. Please note that we welcome public comments on the items on the following agenda. To ensure maximum opportunity for participation, speakers representing themselves may speak for up to 2 minutes each, and those representing groups may speak for up to 4 minutes with one speaker per group. Speakers' comments may address only the items considered at today's meeting. Before we begin with the substantive portion of the meeting, I would like to ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items on today's agenda. If so, I would ask you to please make an appropriate disclosure on the record at this time. We will then be sure that you may recuse yourself from any discussion or vote with regard to such item or items. Hearing none, we will go on. The foregoing having been noted for the record, our first order of business is the approval of the minutes of the directors' meeting of September 12th, 2016. Any additions, corrections? If not, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. I will now ask Sarah St. Amand, President of the Corporation, to provide her President's report. I will note for the record that this item is being presented for your information only, and no vote will be required. Sarah, please begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Henry. Thanks, everyone, again, for being here today. We're inching towards the end of the year. We have a big year ahead of us. So I'll just give you a very short overview of what's been happening since our last board meeting last month. First, with regard to the early construction work, we received our foundation permit from DASNY for the work that we're about to begin on the caissons. We have a drill rig on site, so if anyone's over in the neighborhood and wants to see that, it's very exciting. And Alan confirmed to me this morning, or just now, that the holes are real and they are getting larger. So we are underway. We're really thrilled about that. The majority of the caisson work will happen after tomorrow, and we will be taking advantage of a quiet week over at the operating company to really get cracking on some of this noisy construction work. But really great milestone on that front. We also received a permit from DASNY for the new entrance on 12th Avenue that we've talked about with the board in past board meetings. And Tishman, of course, has mobilized its team on site to oversee this. They're out in the field now with more folks on the team. And, just to reiterate the importance for us on the owner side of keeping this work on track, this early work, it is enabling the design builder to move quickly once they're on board. So we're really focused on this and on keeping everything on schedule. Then let me just turn quickly to the design build work. We are very close, we think, to reaching to having a recommendation that will be presented to the board for the board's approval. I think almost everybody was briefed over the last month on the procurement process that we've undergone over the course of this past year, really kicking off last, call it March. I think there probably was not a ton of new information in that, but hopefully we synthesized it, clarified, and were able to really articulate to the board members how we've approached this, the pieces that have gone into it, the different steps along the way, and perhaps most importantly, the effort that we've put into making sure that this is kept to the highest bar of integrity. And so to that end, of course, as you've all approved these contracts, but we've brought an integrity monitor into the process, a procurement consultant, and it's really worth underscoring that Karen Ray, who you all have now either spoken with or met face-to-face, is a real veteran in this space. She's done this in a number of other states around the country. She has a real depth of knowledge in design build, so a tremendous amount of value. I'm sad she's not here right now, but a tremendous amount of value has been brought through her to this process that I think we're in great shape on. So we're all on standby for bringing that to all of you. If anyone has questions in the meantime about the procurement process, we welcome them. We invite the opportunity to talk about it. And then we will come with a recommendation in January to the board. Okay, so then I'm just going to mention a couple of housekeeping items. One is it goes without saying that we continue to work to get materials out sooner rather than later. We are working on tight deadlines, and we are going to keep trying to get these out, earlier so that folks have time to review. It's never Debbie. It's worth noting that. And to that end, we also have prepared a board meeting calendar. I think George was mentioning this as we walked in. We wanted to lay out a calendar for everybody for 2017, just recognizing that we will have the need to have monthly meetings over the next year, or if not 4 years. There'll be a lot of business to cover and a lot of updates to give all of you. So if anybody feels that they already know of a number of conflicts, that information will help us so that we don't have to poll you guys multiple times. And that should make all of our lives a little bit better. I think with that, I'm done. Does anyone have questions before we... Or are you supposed to ask that?
Okay, if not, there are 2 voting items which Sarah will present.
I'm going to have, Robin is going to present the project management contract.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. My name is Robin Stott. I'm ESD Senior Counsel. This item is going to look very familiar to the board because last month you approved assignment 1 of this contract with Tishman for an amount not to exceed $1.5 million. Assignment 1 was essentially to negotiate the scope and the terms and the price for the full project management services for the expected 4-year expansion project. A notice to proceed was issued to permit such Assignment 1 work to begin. Since that time, staff has been working very closely with Tishman to fulfill Assignment 1, and based on the results of that work, today the directors are being asked to authorize the full 4-year project management contract with Tishman on the terms which are set forth in your materials and which I will describe. Just briefly, let me remind you, as is set forth in the materials and was stated in November, these project management services as a whole were competitively bid via a public RFP. Each of the 3 responding firms was interviewed, and a 5-person staff review committee identified Tishman's response as representing the best overall value based on technical expertise, price, and diversity. Hence the initial authorization in November for Assignment 1. As I said, since November, staff has negotiated contract terms with Tishman. As set forth in your materials, the scope of the services would include full oversight of the design-build expansion project for its expected approximate 4-year schedule. Such scope would include project management, acting as CCDC's owner's representative, or eyes and ears, through the design, construction, and commissioning of the expansion project. Commercial management, including cost and payment management, technical compliance, design support, construction compliance and supervision. Very importantly, coordinating with the Convention Center Operating Corporation to ensure that there is continued safe operation of Javits during the expansion project, and also quality control and outreach. The contract will also define key personnel and the rates for such personnel. Staff undertook a very thorough review of the project management services expected to be required over the 4-year life of the project, with technical support to determine appropriate levels of staffing by discipline, by level of experience, and by hours expected to be needed. Based on such review, the directors are being asked to approve a total contract amount not to exceed $38 million for the 4-year life of the contract. CCDC staff will, of course, continue to reevaluate and adjust the requisite services to minimize expenses wherever necessary. Tishman would bill on an agreed time and materials basis. The term of the contract would run for 4 years, and let me note, just to be clear, the commencement would run from the date of the board's Assignment 1 authorization, and in order to avoid duplicate contracts, today's request is inclusive of and not duplicative of the prior $1.5 million for Assignment 1. The contract would be funded by revenue derived from the CCDC 2015 bond series hotel unit fee, which we have in the bank, as I understand it. The directors are being asked to authorize this project management contract with Tishman on these terms, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
I do have a question.
David, go ahead.
First of all, I just want to say, Sarah, thank you very much for arranging for the briefing. I thought it was very helpful. I do hope that there will come a time at a future board meeting when the board considers and approves the.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. And our intention is to do that, to just, if anyone didn't hear, to ask the board to formally approve the process that we laid out in those slides that you received.
I do want to talk a little bit, and I appreciate your presentation about this, and raise questions which I had previously asked just to see how we're thinking of addressing them. And I think the questions that I have really fall into three categories. One is the level of information that we're getting about the financial terms of the agreement. You say that the contract.
The agreement.
I'm sorry. I'm talking now about the agreement you just discussed.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
The project management agreement.
Project management agreement. Excuse me. Where you said that the contract will set forth the rates, but the rates, of course, aren't in here. And I'd like to know. I want to come back to this. So the financial understanding. The second is the sort of functionality under the contract, and particularly, I wonder if we could talk a little bit about what happens, as inevitably will happen, where there are change orders to the contract, or where there are design changes that are required either by experience in the field or
to the DB contract,
to the underlying contract.
Correct. Yes.
And the third is we discussed this question, and which was previously been discussed as a marriage agreement, let's say. And as you know, I've expressed concern about the duration of this agreement and the question of how the agreement is unwound or terminated in the event that we are unhappy with the services, and what the ongoing process for ongoing review is. Because while I think everybody is happy and excited about doing this, things can go wrong. And one of the things which is not discussed at all in here is how we get out of it if we're not happy. And equally important, whether we have the right and the ability to adjust the contract terms over the course of that time, so that what type of continuing involvement do we have with this? Because I understand that, at least as originally presented, there was some type of a built-in cost escalator for the benefit of the contractor. But presumably, we may also have changes that we may want to adjust the contract as we're going forward. So I'd like to know how locked into it we are. And then finally, in that regard, you say that it's being billed on a time and materials basis. I'd like to understand more about what that means in this particular instance, and what the meaning of the $38 million limit is. Is this some type of a cap on the total cost, or is this merely the amount that we're presently authorizing? What happens if it turns out that it's not $38 million, that we get 2 years in and they've burned $38 million, and we really need, $75 million? So can you
Sure. Yes.
can
I try those in reverse order?
In any order that you want. I'd like to have a discussion about the contract that addresses
Yes, of course.
this.
No, that's perfectly fine. We should have all the details you need. Again, as I jotted them down. Let me see if I can cover them. This is a cap on total costs. It is a not to exceed. We certainly don't anticipate a burn rate through 2 years. This is this gets back to your first question, which is a detailed analysis of the expected services required and the rates applied, which I will address. So this is it's a hard cap. If life changes and somewhere 3-4 years down the road, as we near the end of this project, more money is necessary, we will have to come back to you and explain why that is and what it is that we would be requesting of you. But for now, it's expected to be a hard cap for the 4 years of service.
It's not for the completion of the project, it's for 4 years of service. So if the underlying design build contract extends past 4 years, it's automatically more than $38 million?
False. It is.
No, I'm not. I'm just asking, how is this structured?
It's a $38 million contract. As I say, the life of the project is expected to be 4 years, and so the $38 million was based on a 4-year expectation. To the extent that the expansion project takes more than that, it is possible, depending on the burn rate through the 4 years, that more money would be necessary. But again, to the extent that that a dime over $38 million is spent, that cannot be done until we come back to this board.
At what point would you have to come back?
When we would expect that the dollars would be over $38 million.
When you know it would be, or when we're running out of money? In other words, at what point?
Well, hopefully we're not going to run out of money, but so it would be when.
But this is important to me. I don't want to minimize it. My issue here is, if it is going to cost more than $38 million, there will come a time before we're writing the check for $39 million for the next $1 million. I'd like to know what our agreement is and what's provided as to how early we would find out about it. How will we see the burn rate?
Mike, if I can help, I appreciate all your points, and I don't want to get too far into Never Land, but my understanding and in my private life, I've done a lot of do not exceed contracts. I want to commend you for them. They're the ones that I most favor because the onus is really on them. When they have exceeded the $38 million, my understanding is will be for extraordinary purposes that are beyond their scope, beyond something that they can control. Like, we found a nuclear bomb shelter built in the 50s that no one knew about that we have to clean up. And that would probably be a valid, we could not see it. They would not be held to a standard that would be something they would anticipate. So I guess my question to you is, if this were to exceed $38 million, and no one has the expectation that it would have to be for something that is out of their control and something that staff would have to approve and think is, equitable, and then you would come back to us. And that's, saying a lot. That's taking a lot of things, and, a lot of things would have to happen for that.
Well, with respect, George, and I've done a lot of government contracts, and that's not how they're generally structured. There's a big difference between private and government work. And in most recent, and I actually have just recently litigated this issue, as Goldie knows, in New York Supreme. And sadly, your nuclear bomb your nuclear shelter is not actually how it works in a government setting. And if the mere passage of time and the need for continuing work, for example, would allow the amount to go over $38 million and would obligate us potentially to pay more than $38 million. So I have to disagree with the way you presented it.
We can't be obligated to pay more.
Not
than $38
obligated.
million.
Would be a legitimate basis.
I think I get to your third question if I'm going in reverse order.
Let me just cast a little light on the methodology for coming up with this number. I want to give a nod to Mark Roche, who most of you have met. Mark recently came from Tappan Zee. He's a construction engineering guy. And we sat and very methodically went through on a discipline by discipline basis and an expertise level. So how many senior people would we need? How many junior level people would we need? How can we build out this team based on the resources that we need to manage this properly on behalf of the state? This contract is our control for keeping this overall $1 billion+ budget under control. So it is our arms and legs for managing this. So we took our best crack at making sure that we have the right management team in place, and that's what gets you to the $38 million. So I'd encourage everyone to focus on the fact that management put the right people, including technical people, in place to do this very deep dive into what the next 4 years will look like. If we were wrong and we need more, we will have to come back and we will say, you know what, this design builder was absolutely a nightmare and we needed to staff it up and add more resources. And we will have to explain that to all of you. If we get lucky and they know what they're doing and we can scale back, I will be the happiest person to say, you know what, we made it through the 4 years and we only used $28 million. So that's the mechanism. And I think over the course of 4 years, our goal as management should be to be transparent and communicate where we are in our contracts. You can ask us at any point, how are things going? And do you feel good about their performance? And we are always, and you can talk to our contractors about this, we are constantly in dialogue on feedback mechanism to make sure that we're getting the right professional services that we need. So that's just a little overview of
I
kind
think
of
that's
how
very
we
important.
manage.
And I don't mean to be criticizing what you're saying here. I unfortunately, I'm sure everybody in this room who's been involved in these government contracts has observed that with the best of intentions, it's difficult to hold the price within the original bid number. And so I'm trying to understand what are the controls that we have in place. And
a do not exceed number would be the first. That's what jumps out. Look, we can never. This might exceed $38 million. It might not. I take comfort in the fact that it is designed as a do not exceed number, and that's the first thing that you mentioned. We can't guarantee a result. We can just guarantee a very good faith effort. I'm really confident that a lot of time went in to make sure that we're holding that line.
well, from your lips to God's ear, let me say.
I'm the wrong person to ask.
The third question, I think, was about outs if the marriage doesn't work, and the contract is clear that CCDC can terminate both for cause and without cause. If we terminate without cause, obviously the only payments would be for work performed to that date. But if for whatever unexpected reason the contract doesn't work out, we have the ability to terminate it at our discretion. Your second question, I think, was about, you called it functionality in terms of what happens if there's a change order in the field, which gets a bit to what George
Functionality
was
was
discussing.
how are we actually running this, this set of responsibilities?
Well, again, as Sarah said, Tishman will be the eyes and ears of, or the arms and legs, however she described it, for us, but they will be reporting to us on a regular basis. The meeting schedule and a deliverable of reports is all set forth in the contract terms as well. And we expect to be, obviously, in close communication with them weekly, if not daily, on what's happening on the project side.
So are we delegating in this contract authority to authorize change orders, to make changes in the design, whatever design it is ultimately that's approved by the board? I'm trying to understand.
all of those will come back
Are we
to-
holding on to that authority?
Yes.
And then so that comes back from
To
Tishman
CCDC
to
staff.
CCDC.
And just to also just comment briefly on how we envisage the how we will weave this team into our team. Again, this is all we are embarking on this, but we have dedicated space. Alan is graciously parting with, so that we have folks that are able to sit at Javits. They will be obligated to sit with the design builder once the design builder is selected and mobilizes on site, so that we have that interface. And Mark is also going to be spending more time on Javits campus as well. So we will have this kind of, we're weaving our teams together between the owner, the operator, the design builder, to make sure that the communication lines are open and that we see what's going on.
Okay, any other questions for staff on this item?
Yes, the rates. Are the rates going to be public?
I think we're happy to share.
The rates set forth in the executed contract will be public, yes.
Yeah. For reasons that relate to all the public discussion about rates which are paid to various agencies, and the fact that they are subject to freedom of information review, I think it's very important that the board members take a look at these rates, because people are going to be able to say, oh, well, did you realize that you voted to pay, Mike Carey $5,000 an hour on this thing?
That's discount. That's public discount.
No, in all seriousness, I suspect that the rates, I'm sure the rates have been negotiated, but on the other hand, it is us that's approving these rates, and I'd like to know what the rates are.
And they will be public, yes.
So how do we deal with this? Since
You mean you want to see them right now?
I'd like just to have a process in which we have a chance of looking at it. It doesn't have to be right now, but I do think it's important that the board realize.
So I don't have them the numbers in my head, but let me comment and see if it gets you comfortable, and if not, we can try and run and figure out how to move forward. We did I think pretty successful negotiation on our side, if I may say so. Thank you Mark also, to get the rates in line with what is seen in other public and private projects around the city and also around the country. So we really wanted to make sure that we were not overpaying either the senior executive who's going to be leading the project or the folks who are coming in, on the project team. So what we have is a comp sheet, and we needed that not just for the board, but for our own management. I don't know if you had anything more to add. But.
Well, and again, Sarah and Mark did a great job, but obviously we have a team of professionals who have been through this many times before, understanding what, one of them is sitting right behind you, Glenn Johnson, to understand what are market rates and to make sure that we are well within the bounds of acceptable market rates.
And so you're telling us the rates are market?
Yes. Yes.
So could we just say in that case, I'm happy to vote to authorize this, but I would like to see the rates in the event that, just in case there's something that jumps out that, whoa, that we may want to ask.
Presumably there will be a rate schedule will be an exhibit to the executed contract, which will be public, yes.
So can we, if we could have an understanding that we'll take a look at it, and if something really looks really crazy, we'll have an opportunity to discuss it with Sarah. Yeah.
Sure, of course.
That would.
Okay, with that, I do have one question. Isn't Dan Tishman a consultant to us on this project? Or to the governor?
That was, the answer to your question is yes, and it was evaluated by the legal department and determined that the entering into this contract would not be a conflict. Recall also that this is not the first Tishman contract.
No, I just want to, for the record, make sure that we...
Yes, no, it'd been vetted.
The reason I paused is when I think consultant, I think paid. He's obviously not paid for his work.
Yeah. Okay, with that, I think we're ready for a vote. Can we motion, please?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Next, Sarah will present our final item on today's agenda, which relates to 2 trade contracts for the transformer building construction. Sarah, please.
Great. Thank you very much, Henry. So on these 2 items, we are continuing the buying of the early construction work, the transformer yard with the procurement. I'm looking at my colleague Goldie, who's done the bulk of the work on this. But today we are presenting 2 contracts to you. The first is for service switchgear, unit substations, and power transformers. And the second, is for the engine generator sets, paralleling gear, and auto transfer switches. So this is all, I shouldn't say all, this is the bulk of the heavy equipment that will go into the transformer building and power both the existing Javits and the expansion.
I just wanted to make a note to everyone that we revised these materials this morning, and they were revised materials were on the desk. So what's in your books is actually not correct, but you should look at what's on the table.
Yes.
So in looking at the first procurement, we issued a request for proposals, as we've talked about, following the same procurement guidelines that we've used for the past construction bids. We received 3 responses by the deadline on November 7th, and upon interviews with the 2 lowest bidders, we determined that Academy Energy Group was the lowest qualified bidder. And the reason for the revised documents is that we have a note here that AEG is currently in the process of getting approval from Department of State to conduct business in the state. So we are just asking for approval today, subject to their getting that approval, which hopefully is going to be forthcoming. AEG's bid was for approximately $3.8 million, which includes a base bid price of $4 million, less a voluntary alternative deduct that they proposed for $200,000. We, in going out with our proposal, had asked bidders to come back with alternates, and AEG was, I think, the only firm that did come back with an alternate. We work with Tishman as construction manager, also with Con Edison, and with our sub, who's focused on mechanical, electric, and plumbing, to understand if that was the right fit for the project, and it was determined that it was the best overall contract package at the lowest price. I wanted to give you the comp number to what we had budgeted for this work, which was, give me 1 minute, believe it was $5.525 million. Part of the differential, it represents some scope that will be, handled in another contract. So it's not that it's so much lower, it's that there's a little bit of scope differential.
The comp was generated by Tishman?
We had a cost estimate that was done by Tishman, same as before. And then our last comment on this contract is that in the event that AEG, for some reason, is unable to obtain the Department of State authorization to work in New York, we, in our sole discretion, would like to reserve the right to go to the second lowest bidder, and we want, for the sake of the construction schedule, to seek director's approval today to do that. And that dollar amount for the second lowest bidder was $3.9 million.
Can I raise a
Do you know why the other two bidders didn't give the voluntary alternate?
I don't. I'm looking to Glenn.
It's just, it's actually a different, it's a different
Piece of
manufacturer,
equipment that they
equipment
couldn't get to or whatever?
Yeah, it's just, again, this is mainly an equipment vendor purchase. So they proposed an alternate that Con Ed has used before, and it's been acceptable with them. So it's one that they're familiar with, and I guess they got better value.
Better value, yeah, okay.
Con Ed's acceptable.
Can I ask a process question here? Because I note that the recommendation is from the staff, but unless I'm getting this wrong, we also should have a recommendation from Tishman, and it's an independent recommendation from Tishman that whatever it is that we're acquiring satisfies the contract needs, and that they've reviewed it, and as our project manager, they recommend it. I'm sure that that's the case, but on the other hand, I would like to actually...
We get that, and we get that in writing.
Right. So can we also know that? I think the board should know that the project manager has reviewed it, finds the price to be reasonable, and recommends it.
Yeah, that is built into
I'm
the
sure
process.
it is the case, but on the other hand, I also would like the board to know that they actually have, and they're not just assuming it, that they have reviewed it, find the price to be reasonable.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, any further questions on this first procurement? Do we need a separate vote?
I don't know. I think we should. Okay.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, Sarah.
Great,
Carry
thank
on,
you.
please.
Okay, so for the second trade contract, which is the engine generator sets, paralleling gear, and automatic transfer switches, we again issued a public procurement. We did a public procurement in the contract reporter in September. We received 2 responses by the deadline in early December. And based on a review, we found that Cummins Power Systems LLC was the lowest qualified and responsible bidder. We did, again, have a number of alternate scenarios. Many of them had to do with warranty policies. And by the time we reviewed all of these, we found that Cummins was both the lowest bidder on the base price and also taking into account the required alternates. So the contract that we're seeking approval to enter into is for $6.19 million, which compares to a estimate, again, with because of the alternates, slightly different scope, but that was budgeted at $8.5 million. With that, I will
Let me
see
make a
your
comment on this.
questions.
This is a very tight bid, and if you actually look at it, the bid, it looks to me like, except for ongoing maintenance services, the second low bidder is the lower bidder. In other words, the actual acquisition of the material is cheaper, and the work is cheaper from the second low bidder. And the only thing that's creating the spread is, am I getting this wrong? Is that we're
No.
paying for maintenance?
We
No, I'm getting it wrong.
To me, like, I
No,
think
because
the
you're
base
here,
bid is
Bid was
Cummins has a
$100,000.
lower
Oh, and
base
so
bid
this
price.
comes up to
It's here.
right. So this comes up. So this comes up to 6,157, and this comes up. I see. So it's still slightly lower,
Yeah.
even though this.
No,
even though.
the bids with the alternates.
Yeah, but if you take out the maintenance alternate, but you're right, it's still slightly lower. But is there some reason why you look at that switch difference? It's such a big difference. It's like a 50% spread. But I see it's like $70,000 lower, even taking that into consideration.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And we did work with the operator on what the right maintenance approach is. It's obviously very important for them. You know, it's not just the installation, but how will this look for them to operate it going forward?
Well, I think this type of analysis is super valuable, and to the extent that in the future, we're looking at this type of contract. If you could provide this type of analysis, we can see where the funds are actually going. And
great, thank you.
Any other questions? We need a motion, correct?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, Sarah. I think that concludes your portion of the meeting, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to thank everyone for your participation today. Also like to personally thank everybody for their work during the year and wish you all happy holiday season. I will note for the record that next year we have meetings every month, as Sarah said, but I was able to successfully negotiate no meeting for August.
Thank you for that.
As even Sarah needs a month off to recharge our batteries. There being no further business, I will call for a motion to adjourn. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everybody. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.